Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Profit Minds podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Suzy Kirch, creator of the Profit Minds Growth System, a unique blend of profit growth, productivity acceleration, and building robust business process for scale. In every episode, I interview entrepreneurs and small business owners from around the world with a unique story to tell. You can find the show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. Well, hi, everyone. Today, my guest is my daughter, Suzy Kirch, the AI guru of Profit Minds. And today, we're going to tackle a really important topic in the world of AI, and that is IP, how to handle IP and confidentiality concerns. Suzy, why don't you talk a little bit about what's at top of mind for many of our clients?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things that we hear about is people being concerned of just their data security in general, right? How do I make sure that my data doesn't get leaked? Or if they're dealing with confidential information or proprietary information, whether it's IP or, company secret or trade secret, right? Any number of those different things. Not even getting to HIPAA and similar laws for people data and making sure that that kind of data is safe and secure. But these are all sorts of different data concerns that people have, which is very, very fair. I am always comforted when people have these kinds of concerns because it means that they are thinking about what's happening with their data when they're using generative AI models. And really what the issue is, primarily, is if you are using a general kind of out there for the public model, so like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, if you're using their model on their website, it is entirely possible for these models to be training on your data. There is a specific
When you say that,
Yeah.
what do you mean?
So what I'm meaning is that basically these models learn based on what you are giving it. And basically what they are learning is that these are words that can come together. So essentially, because these models are predicting an output, they are generating the output one word at a time. And so as it learns what words come together or can come together, it continues to update its learning and understanding of how sentences can be put together. So when you give it information, it could theoretically parrot it back to somebody.
So now, my understanding is that the generative AI doesn't actually understand what you're saying. It's predicting what's the next word. And so what you're saying is when you put words together in a particular way and give it to an AI model without any IP protection, we'll talk about that in a minute, that increases the probability that those words will appear together in your output and somebody else's output as it's generating a response to a prompt.
Precisely.
Okay. So what's a user to do?
Well, first of all, most of these models have settings where you can turn off training on these models. So, for example, in ChatGPT, going into your user settings and then following to data.
Do you want to just do that demo here on the screen so
Yeah.
people can watch it?
Yeah. So you're on ChatGPT, and you can do this from any chat. but you go to your little, you may have some initials. Mine's a diamond. I think it has to do with your subscription level. And then we go to settings. And then we go to data controls. And inside data controls, we see this improve the model for everyone. You see here that I have that turned off. That means that in theory, the model is not learning from my input.
Okay.
And also my output as well. Should be both. So this is allow your content to be used to train our models, which makes ChatGPT better for you and everyone who uses it. We take steps to protect your privacy. And also, there's only so much control that we have.
Right.
So you can choose to take them at their word and trust them. And I do for the most part, but I'm not going to put IP, I'm not going to put any sort of secret or confidential data in the general models. In the generic models, it's just, I trust it, but I just, there's still an amount of uncertainty. And so for me, I need to be 100% certain that the confidential information isn't going to go anywhere. And so there are different measures that you can take. One of the most important is to make sure that you have an AI policy that covers this so that your entire company is paying attention to these things. Because it doesn't help if you're the only one paying attention to it and the rest of the company is putting the data out there. The data's out there at that point.
Yeah. So really important. One of the most important things that we talk to our clients about is creating that IP policy. What is okay to do with AI? What is, what is it that you should do? What is it you shouldn't do? What should you avoid? What's okay? So forth. So creating an AI use policy, really, really important first step.
And this is understanding and making it clear what data you can use on it, what files you can and can't use. This is also what models you can and cannot use. If there are certain models like DeepSeek that you say, you know what, no one should be using, I don't care what version, that should go in an AI policy as well. Anything that has to do with what you can and cannot do, this also includes what kinds of tasks. If there are certain tasks you don't want being done with AI, if there are certain workflows you don't want being done with AI, right? Anything that has to do with how people are using AI, that should go or can go into an AI policy. And from my standpoint, the biggest things to put in there is looking at what data can and cannot be used and what models can and cannot be used. That covers most of it.
There may be some specific tasks, but I think that's an exception from our experience anyway.
And it generally has to do more with the type of company that we're talking to that'll have the edge cases. The general company kind of doesn't necessarily have those, but if you're dealing with, an HR firm, it may be a little different because they have extra security concerns that they need to take into account. If you're working with a healthcare company, right, there may be some additional securities. It's generally having to do with those that have to deal with HIPAA laws and other confidential laws for privacy and yada, yada, yada. Because there are a lot of safeguards around personal data. And so it's important that we continue, whether or not there are laws preventing it, it's still a part of making sure that you are running a good business, a safe business, an ethical business, right? You want to make sure that to some extent you're ahead of the laws, even if it's, the laws are still catching up with AI.
and probably will for quite some time.
Yes.
The speed at which this field is moving is really stunning. Uh,
Yes.
to think that ChatGPT released um, its first serious model just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And we've gone from chatbots to now agentic type behavior, right? We've gone
Yeah.
through from chatbots to reasoning, and we're starting to see agents appear. Um, and it, we're just a few years in.
Yeah. It's really it's changing so rapidly. And so it's important to keep in mind not just having an AI policy, but revisiting it as capabilities change,
Right.
as new models come out, right? There may be a new model, right? Handful of months ago, we didn't have DeepSeek. And
Right.
so, right, now that model comes up, and some companies, they may have already created an AI policy. If you did, good job. You're ahead of the curve. But as new technologies come out, as new capabilities come out, you need to revisit your AI policy. Because again, as things change, you need to make sure that you are keeping up with the times. That's the biggest thing that we're trying to help you
Right.
guys with, is making
Right.
sure that you are not left behind.
Yeah, it's really important. What about the ethics of AI? We've heard a lot about copyright infringement. I know there's some lawsuits going on. Um,
Yeah, what what people need to remember is that these models are trained on data that came from people. The data itself is flawed. The data itself is biased. So if something is learning from biased information, it is inherently biased. And so you cannot take it at its face value. You need to think through the issues at hand. You need to not just say, oh, well, AI told me that this was a good decision, so it's a good decision. You still own your decision. And taking ownership and keeping that ownership when you are tasked with a choice, that's still on you. The AI made me do it is not a valid excuse. Um,
yeah,
and
don't
so,
don't check your brain at the door.
yes, keep your brain in your head. It's very, very important that it stays there and that you keep it engaged. So, as you are using it, this is one of the reasons that we encourage people to use AI as a thought partner, right? So, ask it for some potential solutions and not just the solution, because there may be additional things that you're not thinking about that
Mhm.
are actually relevant to what you're trying to figure out. And so, by coming up with a number of different solutions, probably attacking the problem from more different directions than you yourself maybe have thought of, but this now gives you a number of solutions to look at, to evaluate, which you can have it help you evaluate, but you at the end are still responsible for that decision.
Yeah. One of the things that I really like is if I'm trying to decide on a direction or something like that, I'll ask AI, give me 5 different solutions. And then and maybe I would even ask, from 5 of the world's leading experts, acknowledged experts in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can do things like, well, ask it to create a scoring rubric and say, I'm going to give 20 points to this, I'm going to give 30 points to this, I'm going to give 25 points to this, so forth and so on, so that you can say, this is the most important criteria. Maybe one of them should get 50% because it's the most important thing. But have it come up with a scoring rubric and then look at that and say, are those the right weighting factors here? Are those the things that are most important? Is everything the same? Or should we have, some things that are more important than others, and have it score each of the things on each of those elements of the scoring rubric?
And something else that I find really fun and interesting is having the experts critique each other's solutions, right? So if you have 5 different potential solutions from 5 different known experts of the world in whatever topic, you then have them almost engaging in their own dialogue of, what would expert A say about expert B's solution, right? What would they say about these different solutions? Because then you can go, okay, well, maybe these 2 or these 3 solutions are kind of the right thing, but how can we combine them? And then get it to work on combining the solutions, right? You don't ever have to take just one of the solutions as given. You can always make adjustments. Nothing that generative AI gives you is set in stone. You can always keep interacting with it. You can always keep changing it.
And again, one of the metaphors that we like to describe AI is as a tireless intern. So never going to get impatient with you asking it to do the same thing over and over and over again. It's always happy to comply. It's always happy to bring you the next iteration of the result. But just like you wouldn't take something that came from an intern and give it directly to a client or your boss or a coworker or even a subordinate or especially the board of directors, right? You're always going to check it first. So treat it like an intern, check the results.
Yeah. And this is even if it's giving you links, right? Because you can ask it to give you the sources that it's using, but it's important to not just check that those are real sources, but that those real sources actually say the thing that it's claiming, right? It is a multi-step process, and I understand that that sounds really tedious, but it is important to make sure that you are doing your due diligence, especially when it impacts pretty much anything. Because at a certain point, everything impacts people. And so making sure that you are, you know, doing the responsible thing. I like to think that people, generally speaking, want to be responsible individuals. And so making sure that you're doing that when you're using generative AI, right? AI made me do it. Not so good. Not so good. And so, when we're talking about bias, right? One of the ways that you can mitigate some of the bias is asking it to take a global perspective. Now, this is one of those really interesting things that you would hope wouldn't actually make a difference, but it actually makes a pretty big difference. And so I would actually encourage you to try this yourself, right? Don't take my word for it, just like we're saying don't take anything that the AI says at face value, but try it yourself. Ask it, maybe you're trying to come up with a new set of company values or a new set of guidelines, or maybe you're looking for a new marketing campaign, but making sure that you are, try it just as you would normally ask, and then basically run it again in a new chat or editing that specific prompt and asking it to take a global perspective and look at the difference, right? Compare the two and see what difference it makes, because it'll make a bigger difference in some cases than you'd expect. But that's one of those things where you can, right? We are such a connected world at this point. No one's working in isolation, not
Right,
really.
right.
And so making sure that you are considering those other perspectives that maybe you wouldn't if you were just doing this on your own, right? That's one of the advantages of using AI is you can get those other perspectives too. And so a phrase like taking a global perspective can allow you to get some more of those, broader perspectives included in what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So, by way of closing, um, do you want to summarize what we've talked about here?
Yeah. So the first thing that we talked about is making sure that your data is safe and secure. And one of the biggest things to do is one, turning off that improving your model. There are, I don't remember if we mentioned, there are some models that have additional security built in.
Right.
Um, and then also having an AI policy that makes sure that the entire company is on the same page about what is and is not allowed use, whether it's what data you can or cannot use, what models you can or cannot use, and sometimes what tasks you can or cannot do. And making sure that all of those are built into this AI policy that you then review on a regular basis, or
And disseminate. Yeah.
at least whenever big things come out, right?
Right.
When big changes in the AI world come out, review the policy. Make sure that it's up with the times.
And make sure that everybody understands it and follows it.
Yeah,
The policy is not worth the paper it's written on if nobody's paying any attention to it.
very
So,
true.
use AI and ask AI questions. Use it to get different perspectives on things. Be cognizant of the fact that it can be biased, that it can go off the rails. You always want to check and make sure. But again, we're not lawyers, not legal people. So if there's an IP concern, double check with your lawyers, check with legal counsel. But AI it's fun as long as it's safe.
Yeah.
And that concludes our show. Thanks so much to my guest and my daughter, Suzy. And so I hope you've learned something about IP and confidentiality and the use of AI. And thanks for watching. Have a grateful day. You've been listening to the Profit Minds podcast. This is your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch. Please visit www.profitminds.net for other episodes or to contact me. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others. Thanks for listening. Have a grateful day.